second for my camera. Okay, now.
Go. Greetings, members of the Fredericksburg Native Plant Society. My name is Alan Smith. I was scheduled to give this presentation back in March, and I think everybody knows what happened. And unfortunately, our president, Paula Stone, thinks outside the box, and she contacted me and wanted to know if we would want to try to do this now using social media. And I thought, why not? Because otherwise, who knows when we'll be able to get back together at our regular monthly meetings. So this is what we're gonna try. If you would like to ask questions, you might take some notes because we'll give you information at the end as to how you can take care of any questions and answers since we're doing this by film. My talk is about orchids, both native and introduced. And many of you may have remembered seeing the winter issue of the Native Plant Society of Texas News, and lo and behold, it had an article about Texas orchids, and they talk about 4 different species of orchids in this article, and we'll be discussing that as well. Now, most people aren't aware of the number of orchids in the state of Texas. Here is an excellent book, and I'll be flashing this up on a slide at the end. Joe and Ann Lizio say there's 52 or 54 different species of orchids in the state of Texas. This is a well-written book, and I highly recommend it if you are wanting to know more about orchids in Texas. We'll flash this up on the screen at the end so you can get the information off of it. Before we start talking about orchids, I want to talk about different in plants. We have on this side here what we call dicotyledonous plants, and we start on the evolutionary scale. Rhenales are the most primitive of the flowering plants, and if you are familiar with having planted green beans, you remember the seed is quite large, and after you put it in the ground, it pops up, and you have 2 little leaf-looking structures, but they're still, what these are the cotyledons, and they provide the food for the plant to get started before it actually starts doing photosynthesis and producing its own food. This is an example of Rhenales. This is one of the very primitive plants, and it comes out in the spring. One of the first things you'll see. And this is the anemone, and you'll find one of the first you'll find around here, and it'll either be white or blue. When you're in the very bottom of the scale, everything is numerous. You have numerous petals. You have sepals underneath, and they'll be numerous. Here you have the stamens, which produce the pollen, and then here you have the ovaries, and this consists of 3 parts. You have these little globes up here, which are called the stigma, and then there's a style, which is a little tube that the pollen goes down, and then it gets to the ovary and fertilizes it, and then you get fertilized seeds. On the other side, you have the monocotyledons, and the biggest group in here are the which are your grasses. And the most advanced are the orchidales, the orchids which are going to be the discussion of today's presentation. This is a Cattleya, which you may recall used to be the common corsage orchid. And this is one this happened to bloom this year for me, and this is one that I own. And I'll have more to say about it later on, but you'll notice that it has fewer parts. You have 2 petals here, and then your orchids typically have a 3rd petal, which is modified into a lip. Here are your sepals. You got 1, 2, 3, versus numerous sepals down on the bottom. In here you'll have a stamen, which will produce the pollen, and you'll have usually a single ovary structure, but it'll produce numerous seeds. Now the seeds on these orchids are very small. They don't have much food to carry the plant. When the seed germinates, it has to rely on what was called a mycorrhizal fungi, and that fungi provides moisture and nutrients, and some orchids require even more mycorrhizal fungi during its life cycle. This is one of the species talked about in this particular article. This is Coleorhiza striata, or coral root, and this particular flower, I took a picture of this, or took this picture under the pine forest in Minnesota, and you'll notice that, okay, we have the colored lip petal, and then you have your sepals here, and here's the other 2 petals. And you'll notice that these flowers are white with red striations. That's typical of this genus. And you'll notice on the stem there's no green, so this does not produce chlorophyll. It might have a couple of leaves at the base, but it really relies on the mycorrhizal fungi. This is a distribution map of the 4 that were discussed in this article, and here is the striata occurs here, as well as maculata. And they occur out here in what we call the Trans-Pecos region, and usually in the mountainous areas, and they occur under the trees, usually on fairly moist soil. Here is Odontoglypha, which is just this little area right here, occurs along the Red River, and it's a fall coral root, and it blooms starting in July to September, whereas the others are in the springtime. And then you have the Listenaria, which starts here on the Red River, goes down along the Sabine and along the coast and over here to the Trans-Pecos region. And so it covers a very large variety of habitats. So it's a very versatile plant in terms of where it can grow. This is Spiranthes gracillus, and it is, actually this one's Parksii. This is listed as endangered in the state of Texas. You notice very small flowers, and it's kind of hard to distinguish. And I was uncertain as what I was dealing with here, because I do not pick orchids in the field because they're so rare, and I don't like to be the one that destroys the species by start picking them. This is southern slender lady's tresses or grassless, and you'll notice it gets its name from the spiraling of the flower on the stalk. It's a short flower, or about flowering stalk about 6 to 8 inches high, and it is readily seen because it grows along the highway rights-of-way. This is the distribution list. Didn't show all of it, but it got its name. It's called Navasota ladies tresses, and because it was first found in Navasota County, but it occurs in about 11 counties here. I have found it. It doesn't show on Harris County, but I've found it in Harris County and Montgomery County, growing in road ditches, usually in the summertime, especially after rains. So it gets pretty common in the summertime in South Texas here. This is Habernaria ciliaris. It's referred to as yellow fringed orchid. I took this picture in North Carolina back in 1973, and you'll notice that the lip is kind of ragged, and that's where it gets its name. Fringe, it gets a fringe name because of those little pieces that come off of it. Here is the flowers that haven't opened up yet, just buds. It forms on the head, and they'll get about maybe 12 inches tall. And I found this growing along a roadside, about like our FM roads here in Texas. A lot of sandy soil, and they're growing under the canopy of pine trees. This is a distribution list for Habernaria. Also, this is a synonym for it, Plantathera ciliaris, and this is the genus name that you'll find in the book by Legiel. But here you can see it grows all the way starting up in Quebec, comes down the eastern seaboard and across to Texas. And my guess is if you're going to find it in Texas, it's going to be over there in the eastern part of the state with where the in the piney woods areas. You'll have sandy soils, and they're going to be a little more acid under the pine trees. This is Cypripedium pubescens, or called yellow lady slipper. You notice it's a highly modified lip and has large leaves. This particular orchid grows in boggy areas. This was taken up in Minnesota in 1970 or 69. This is another view of that orchid, Cypripedium, and you notice how it's fused together, and then you have a cup here, and the insects will get down in there, the stamens and the ovary are down inside here. And here's your other two petals, and you have sepals in behind here. This particular orchid grows in boggy areas. It doesn't grow on the kind of material that you see it in the grocery stores. But you'll notice a very wide distribution all the way across Canada. There's only 6 states that haven't been found in the continental U.S. It does occur here in Texas. Go back. It occurs here in Texas. I worked for the highway department right after graduate school, and the I would take Highway 21 from Madisonville up to Tyler, going through Palestine, and there was a picnic area there, and I was driving by, and I found or saw what I thought was Solomon seal, so I turned around, went back, and sure enough, there was Solomon seal growing in the shady area under some pine trees, and lo and behold, there were some Dutchman breeches, and also I found some cypripedium growing there. So I know that it does grow does occur here in Texas. There's also a pink flowered one that looks just like this, except it's pink, and just as beautiful as this little orchid. So this is Orchid spectabilis, known as showy orchis, and it has the lip here, modified lip, and it has the sepals, and the sepals are kind of a light pink or a light lavender, depends on how your eyes see it, I guess. And pretty large leaves. So here's a distribution map. It doesn't come down. Now there's something missing up at the top, and that's North and South Dakota. They don't show it as occurring in either state, but this particular picture was taken in 1970 or 1969 in North Dakota. The university has a field station there, and that's where I took these pictures of this particular plant. I have taken pictures of it in southeastern Nebraska. It has a synonym too, so called Galliera spectabilis, and but you'll notice it doesn't show in text, and I don't believe it's included in the book. Here we have a pretty little orchid called Calypso bulbosa, fairy slipper, and all of this right here is that modified lip, and it has these red dots on the yellow, but it has a little bit of white around the edge, and then the rest is what I would call that light lavender. Here's your other two petals and your three sepals. This is a side view of the same orchid, and underneath that white lip portion of the lip, it's yellow, and then you got white with red striations and these little red spots in the yellow. I don't know what all this is about, but it probably has to do with attracting insects for fertilization of the plant. And here you have these other two petals and the three sepals. This is a bract, and then it'll have one or two leaves at the base. This is a distribution map for Calypso, and it occurs clear across Canada and most of the western states. I have found a population of it along the Pearl River over in southeastern Louisiana. So, now you may wonder why it's not recorded in some states like I found here, but the getting listed or showing in a distribution map usually requires that the plants have been collected sometime in the past, and they've been placed in a herbarium, and the location noted on a card along with the pressed plant, and that's how you end up getting these listed on here. It doesn't mean that they don't occur in some of these other states. It's just that nobody's collected them there and recorded it as having occurred there. Now we'll get into the introduced orchids. HEB here has probably one of the best varieties that I've ever seen. and when you compare it to their Bernie or Kerrville store, and I'll talk about some of these that I've purchased here that you never see in the other stores. This is Phalaenopsis. This is a common moth orchid. This is the one that seems to be in favor right now, and it has 2 flowering stalks, usually with 6 to 8 flowers, and they'll flower at about the same time. Here's a close-up, and here's the modified petal that's shown on side view, and that's this one right here. But here you have your 2 petals, and then this is the modified petal, and then here are your 3 sepals. This one has kind of a unique color. From what I can tell, I don't see many of these around. This is a dendrobium. This is the first orchid that was put on the market in any vast amounts that I recall. And we bought this one back in 2001 after we had gotten our kitchen repaired. We got flooded during Tropical Storm Allison. So we kind of rewarded ourselves by splurging on an orchid. And I don't know why it's fallen out of favor for the moth orchid. It gets a lot of flowers on it, and they're pretty easy to grow. And the nice thing about this orchid is you can come in after the flowers are done blooming and cut off a section of the stem, put it in that bark media, and grow a new plant. This is a real favorite of mine. I had 2 of these. This is this gold colored one that's got the red fringe, and then I had a red one that was about this color, but it was red all over with white fringe on it. It gets a number of stalks and kind of broad leaves that look like grass leaves, and so you get a lot of flowers from one plant, and it's always at the same time. The biggest problem with this particular plant is that it's susceptible to white it's a fungus that gets on it, and it gets on the leaves, and my approach to getting rid of it is to take and rub it with rubbing alcohol. It'll kill the spores, but the problem is it takes the wax off of the leaves, and so the cure is as bad as the disease itself. Here we have Paphiopedilum, and it's a green lady slipper. You'll notice it looks a lot like the calypso. You got one terminal flower on a stem, and but it also looks like the cypripedium in that it has the lady slipper-like look to it. Then you have the petals and the sepals. I got this one at HEB as well. And I also had a brown one that I got there, but I only got 2 of them, and they were the same year, and I've never seen them there since. Now with the cypripedium, I've seen them there several times. Now they went several years and never had anything, but then this year in April, I noticed they had some white cypripedium, and they were a little bit cheaper than what they have been in the past. Okay, this is the Cattleya libata, and this is the plant that I've had for over 15 years. And as I mentioned early on, that plant was, that flower was the first one I've had in 6 years. And I had decided that it needed to be separated before it got too root bound. There's a lady in San Antonio who raises orchids commercially. I got a hold of her through the San Antonio Orchid Society and sent her some pictures. And she said, yeah, that's a real nice orchid and it does need to be separated, and she would be glad to do it for me. Well, rather than make a trip down to San Antonio, I decided I could do it myself. I've got 3 pieces out of it, and the one that you saw earlier is the only one that survived. So, but this one, up until I separated, I would get two bloom cycles a year, and it would have 2 on one stem and 3 blooms on another stem. And as you can see here, we have three blooms on this one. This is before I had it separated, before I separated it. And orchids are kind of temperamental. If you find the right place that they like, you can just kind of leave them and they'll do all right. But if you don't put them in the right place, you're bound to lose them. And so you just have to test things in your house as to where you want to keep them. Orchids grow well in Houston because you have the high humidity all the time, and so you could leave them out. The only time I ever had to bring them back inside was in the winter if there was a freeze warning on. So hill country here, we have lower humidity, and so the orchids are a little more temperamental. Here is the information on the book. It's Wild Orchids of Texas by Joe and Ann Liggio, Liggio. And it's put out by the University of Texas Press in 1999. It's no longer in print, but if you go online and put in the name of the book or the authors, you should find a number of places where you can purchase a used copy. Now the price will depend on the quality of the book. And but if you're interested in knowing more about native orchids in Texas, this is a good source for you to go to. Now, you may have questions, and if you write your questions down and send them to this email address, Paul will get them to me, and I'll answer them and send them back, and then they'll be posted on the website so everybody can see what the questions and the answers were. And so with that, I hope that this has been informative for you, and we appreciate your being a guinea pig on this exercise, and hope that it works for us. So thank you very much for your time.